What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, and today we're going to be bringing a mid-season installment of Dynasty Decisions, your favorite series we were doing all offseason, where we take your Dynasty teams, your Dynasty questions, and help you assemble for a championship for either now or the future. But I'm ready to roll. I mean, a lot of you guys were questioning this in the Discord. When's it going to make its return? When are we going to do it in season? Well, it's finally here, and we are ready to attack these questions that you guys have. But before we do that, as always, Corey, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. And if you guys want first access to Dynasty Decisions, first dibs to get your questions on here, again, we don't know how often we're going to do these on Friday, maybe every couple weeks or so. But if you want first access, the best way to do it is with our Patreon. Link is in the description, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. It'll also get you access to a private live stream that me and Danny and only a couple people are in. So there's plenty of, personal access to us, help you guys set your lineups, trade, questions that you guys can ask us. I know it's a very busy time of the season for us with, all the DMs that we get on Twitter and all the YouTube comments. So if you guys want, real 100% focused, personalized access to our brains for your Dynasty teams or your fantasy teams in general, Patreon is the best way to do that. So I'm doing good. I'm ready to get into this. If you guys enjoy this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Let's hit the intro.
All right, so let's start off with the first trade of the video, and you can take it away with Zach's trade here.
Yeah, Zach sent me this question on Twitter, and basically he's a rebuilding team. He sent me, I'm not going to go over his entire team, but he's a rebuilder. He has some, long-term pieces. He has Barkley and, a couple young receivers. So he sent me a trade where he'd be trading away Cooper Kupp. And if you're in a dynasty situation and you're a rebuilding team, I'm sure there's no better win now asset right now than Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, because the guy is simply a cut above every other wide receiver in fantasy right now, outside of Devontae Adams, who's been dealing with some other things. So he got Chris Godwin, a first rounder in 2022, a 2023 first, and Matt Ryan. And both of those first project to be, mid to late at the very minimum. And he traded away Cooper Kupp, Miles Sanders, and Russell Wilson. So what are your thoughts on this trade? How do you break this down? I think he did a phenomenal job for a rebuilding team.
Yep, absolutely. And again, as much as I love Cooper Kupp, I think right now, if you're a win now team, he's a very good target to have. But in terms of pure dynasty value, I don't think people realize how actually old he is. He's 28 years old, hitting that, apex of his career where, let's be honest here, the production is going to outweigh the value. So if I break down this deal, I kind of look at it as Chris Godwin for maybe Kupp and Sanders is about fair value. And then you got the 2 firsts and Matt Ryan for Russell Wilson. So I do like your deal as a rebuilding team, getting those first, getting that overall artillery of picks to help you really build out your depth, build out your value. Because let's be honest, the biggest misconception in fantasy football is people want to say, oh, yeah, these rookie picks, you don't want to load up because rookie players are like very, very hit or miss. But what they don't realize is you're not valuing the picks because of the players you're getting with the picks. You're valuing those picks as currency, as assets that are going to keep appreciating and appreciating and appreciating value. Well, listen, that person might say, oh yeah, I'm going to pick 9 to 12 in 2023. Guess what? There could be a season where something breaks wrong. That's a top 5 pick, and you're locked and loaded to a Kayshon Boutte, Bryce Young, Bijan Robinson type of level of prospect. And you basically got that for shipping some older assets that realistically by next year are probably not going to hold their worth. So absolutely love this deal, especially as a rebuilder. Great job with this one.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal deal. I think Godwin and Kupp are about on par in terms of value, especially when you consider age. Even if you are a contending team, maybe Godwin and Matt Ryan is enough to get you to Cooper Kupp. I'd rather have a first rounder than Miles Sanders. I'd rather have a first rounder than Russell Wilson in his situation where he's a rebuilding team. So I think that's a great move overall. I think you got good value for the assets that you traded away. Hopefully you can flip Matt Ryan too, potentially, to a contending team and get, a second rounder and a small piece or something for the quarterback there. So let's move on to Bran Carmichael's team. I'll let you take this one away. You guys can see his team on the screen. He actually has a trade on the table as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys can see the team on the screen. It doesn't really show the full team, but 10 players or so. And you can see he has 6 back half 2022 first, 3 2022 second. So this is clearly a reloading type of team considering the amount of artillery he has in terms of picks. So his question here is, I have an offer of AJ Brown, which he'd be giving up in exchange for Noah Fant and Scary Terry. Do I take it? The answer to that question is, if it was a different receiver than AJ Brown, I'd be like, okay, maybe I'd be tempted. Like if we're talking about, like If I'm looking at my wide receiver rankings,
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, yeah, Stephon Diggs, someone like that, I'd be like, okay, you know what, that's fine. But I honestly believe right now, AJ Brown as a 24-year-old wide receiver is in my clear top 5, top tier of dynasty football wide receivers. So giving that up, as much as I like Noah Fant, as much as I like Terry McLaurin, I simply can't make that type of move. Now, you have those first. If you want an upgrade at tight end, because clearly Jared Cook's not going to be your tight end long term, I would try to acquire a guy like Noah Fant using the picks that you have. So if you offer a first and 2 seconds or a first and
it is a tight end premium, so tight ends are going to be hard to come by. But if, yeah, like you said, if you offer a first and a second or a first and, De'Ami Brown, who you have on your bench, for Noah Fant or for TJ Hawkinson or for Mark Andrews or somebody in that tier of tight end, I think you should be able to get that done. I think looking at your roster and looking at your team, this trade just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for you because you clearly have some cornerstone pieces to make this a quick turnaround, a quick rebuild, because you have Watson, you have Lance, you have Barkley, you have Gibson, you have Javonte Williams, you have AJ Brown, maybe IU can be, into that tier like we thought coming into the season coming up soon, and you have 6 first rounders. So if you wanted to retool this and try and win next year, you could take 2 of your first and go trade for some win now receivers or a win now tight end. You could take another one of your first and go trade, for another quarterback that you might need. And you can spend 3 of them on rookies and really retool this team into a contender. I think you have the foundation for one right now. So I personally wouldn't trade away a foundational receiver like AJ Brown when I'm getting, 80% of what I think I could get in a different kind of move.
For sure. And in terms of the second part, the second question you have here, 3 and 5, any other players I should target before the week 11 trade deadline? This to me is a clear 2022, 2023 type of team. I'm not going to try to contend with this team this year because you just don't have enough stability, enough depth right now to be able to take on a top team. So types of guys that I would be looking for are guys that are going to be undervalued by the community. Zach Wilson. We mentioned a couple trade targets a couple weeks ago, but Cam Akers, you already have Javonte Williams and Antonio Gibson, but Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, a couple other guys that I really like. Heck, I mean, considering the fact that you have a lot of ammunition to be able to rebuild this within 1 year, maybe you inquire about a guy like Michael Thomas. He's still 28 years old. You could probably get him for cheap right now, and he's going to be worth more by next year. Those are the type of players where if I'm trying to make this quick turnaround, I'd be looking to acquire. So I like your situation, obviously, with Watson and Lance and the ammunition in terms of picks. You're in a very good situation. So we can move on to the next question from Ishmael. You could take it away here.
Yeah, this is just a simple question, a simple discussion. I thought it was a good question to talk about relative dynasty value because on the surface, this seems like a fair trade. But when you look at it with the stance of these are assets, these aren't, we're not paying for the fantasy production. We're paying for the appreciating/depreciating nature of these assets. He asked, would you trade either Trey Lance or Trevor Lawrence, which were our 101 and 102 coming into the season in rookie drafts, for Russell Wilson, who's 31, 32-year-old quarterback who is going to give you borderline elite production when he's on the field, but you get the 10-year age discrepancy with Trey Lance and with Trevor Lawrence, and you also get, and this is the important part, an appreciating asset that both Lance and Lawrence were highly decorated prospects coming out. Lance due to his rushing ability, Lawrence due to the fact that he's been a generational type prospect as a passer. So I don't think this is even remotely close. I would take Lance and Lawrence easily. I know, there's maybe some of you guys that play redraft leagues, you don't play in Dynasty. You're like, really? You would take, Russell Wilson? He's still, young enough that he'll be valuable for the next couple of years. But again, focusing on these guys as assets and not necessarily as what the fantasy production is going to be the next 2 to 3 years from now is the important part.
Yeah, and that's the biggest question people have in terms of relating redraft to dynasty is where do I stand in terms of this measure of immediate production that I need versus long-term longevity, appreciating type of assets. And when you look at it, I mean, as much as Russ is going to give you advantage over, let's say, Lawrence and Lance for the next 2 years, after that, it's going to be very, very comparable at minimum. If not, I think, honestly, Lance has the ability to kind of break fantasy football. We've seen it with his rushing ability in spurts. And you're getting that at 24 years old by that time versus Russ being 35. So I do agree. I would much rather at this point Lance or Lawrence, but I understand like thinking about this if you're a contender and you want to win right away. But let's be honest here. Russ is injured right now as it is anyways. So realistically, you're getting that 1.5 type of year advantage of immediate production before Lawrence and Lance really step into their own. At that rate, just give me the 2 young studs.
Yeah, I totally agree. Plus, we have the uncertain future of Russell Wilson, which is going to suppress his trade value in the offseason. If you wanted to trade him away, let's say you're like, oh, I made a mistake. I don't want Russell Wilson now. Well, if he's, holding out with the Seahawks, how much value are you going to get for him? Whereas at least Lawrence and Lance are on their rookie contracts. We know what team they're going to be on. And I would imagine, specifically in Lawrence's case, they're going to do more to surround him with better talent going into next offseason, and they have some ammunition to do that. So, Lumber's trade. Let's talk about his trade. The next one that we have here. And this is a guy that I'm sure is going to be moved all around dynasty leagues this offseason and during the season. We have a Kyle Pitts trade that we have to discuss because Kyle Pitts is one of the most fascinating tight end prospects that we've ever seen. He's, a unicorn. He's not even really being used as a tight end from a fantasy perspective right now. And you can make the argument right now in redraft, he's the tight end one the rest of the season, which obviously, given the discrepancy from age between him, Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller, who are primarily the top 4 tight ends in Dynasty, the age discrepancy is 7-8 years between those guys. Kyle Pitts just turned 21 years old. So this is a premier asset. And we were talking before we started recording, like, where does Kyle Pitts go in a super flex draft? And we both kind of wholeheartedly agree it's a top 15 pick, and any kind of tight end premium, it's a top 10, top 5 pick. So Matt Lumber got a Kyle Pitts trade where he received Uncle Lenny, Kyle Pitts, 2 ones, one in 2022 and one in 2023. And he got a second rounder in 2022 as well, in exchange for primarily Jonathan Taylor and some fodder, I would say. Like a second rounder in 2023 is a pretty valuable asset, but I would say just, the 2022 second and the 2023 second probably cancel each other out, given that one is next year and one is 2 years from now. So I would say this is primarily Kyle Pitts, a first, Uncle Lenny for Jonathan Taylor, and some fodder.
Yeah, no, you easily won this deal. We talked about the fact that we do think Uncle Lenny is going to get re-signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because, quite frankly, if you're looking at it from the Buccaneers' perspective, a lot of people might want to link them to a Kenneth Walker, to a Breece Hall, to an Isaiah Spiller. But realistically, let's say they're picking at the back end of the first round. They want to make sure that they attack those needs. They attack those depth positions that really matter. And you could just run it with Leonard Fournette. We have seen that Bruce Arians and Tom Brady have the trust with this guy on the field. So why would you spend that first round pick on a running back when you can restore that secondary? That
secondary would be a huge thing because everybody's young. Everybody's on a rookie contract. You're not going to re-sign everybody when they're all free agents. And some of them are free agents after this year, Whitehead and Carlton Davis and some of those guys. So it makes a lot more sense to spend their picks not at running back, because Bruce also doesn't like rookie running backs too. He'd prefer to have a veteran running back. We've seen it with Ronald Jones, who's a younger running back who's 23 years old. He's making mistakes left, right, and center. So yeah, I totally agree. I think Uncle Lenny for McCole Hardman, a second and a fourth, I'd rather have Leonard Fournette. And then the rest of that package goes towards the Jonathan Taylor side of things. So yeah, I think Lumber did a phenomenal job. This is a textbook example of people undervaluing picks and undervaluing Pitts as well, because you can make the argument that him and Jonathan Taylor are equivalent value.
Yep. No, I definitely agree there. So we can move on to the next deal, and that's going to be from Wolverine. So he says it's a win now move. Now, what are your thoughts on this deal from a contextual standpoint?
Right. Now, I think we're probably getting into the opposite side of the spectrum with Wolverine's trade here, where Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, right? You secure the Vikings backfield.
Yep.
But you give up 2 ones, mid to late, obviously, if you're a contender. His team is very good. I saw his team. He has, Aaron Jones and a bunch of other great running backs, great wide receivers, great quarterbacks. But Diami Brown, Devin Singletary, I'm not as concerned with those guys. But 2 ones alone for Dalvin Cook is probably too much to give up for me. I know he's going to give you probably elite production for the next 2 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that. But again, we're talking assets right now. This is a depreciating running back who's on the second year of his second contract, third year of his second contract right now. How often in the NFL do you see running backs be elite fantasy running backs for 6-7 years? It's usually only like Hall of Fame caliber running backs that are like that. I'm not saying Dalvin Cook isn't like that, but Dalvin Cook to me fits more in the Jamal Charles, Le'Veon Bell caliber of player, to the point that I don't think he has a chance at the Hall of Fame or anything like that. So what I'm thinking with Dalvin Cook, 1 more year for sure of guaranteed elite production, maybe another year after that. And to me, by the time you get to 2023, Dalvin Cook may no longer be a starting option for you, and you're giving up a first round pick in exchange for that year.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And at that rate, if you're going for a win now type of running back, you could probably get Ezekiel Elliott by knocking off a first on this deal. And at that rate, it's like I'm getting comparable top
Same
5
with Saquon too. With Saquon's injuries right now, you could probably get him for a 1 and Diami and Devin Singletary.
Yeah, so like at that point, it's like if you're talking about comparative value, are we really saying that Dalvin Cook is a full first round pick better right now than, as you mentioned, a Saquon Barkley or an Ezekiel Elliott,
maybe
or
even Austin Eckler or something like that.
yeah,
Too.
Austin Eckler. I mean, even if you look down, like Aaron Jones, like I would much rather just go after that type of win now running back versus a guy that has the name value of a Dalvin Cook. Heck, like I just don't really see the value of giving up 2 picks, especially as you mentioned, like we're assuming mid to late, which I mean, it's probably fair to say, especially as a win now team, but even a mid 2023 pick, like, are we saying by 2024 that's not going to be more valuable than Dalvin Cook? I can't concretely say that.
Right. And again, that's a lot of look ahead. Like, yes, these picks bust
100%.
all the time, but again, first round picks don't bust. First round picks don't get benched. First round picks only appreciate in value. They don't go down. Dalvin Cook, it's downhill from here. One more injury and his value's in the shitter. Like, that's basically what it's going to be with Dalvin Cook.
I mean, look at CMC and Michael Thomas. Literally last year, going into the year, if you're to talk about a startup, Michael Thomas and CMC were the respective number ones at their position, no doubt about it. Again, I still have CMC as my number one because of his elite advantage. But look at Michael Thomas. He went from the number one overall dynasty wide receiver to now he's probably in the 15-ish type of range.
Yeah, that's about where I have him ranked.
Yeah, so like it happens so fast. It happens so unexpected. By getting ahead of the curve, you're basically trading these players at their peaks when you have the opportunity. I know it sucks. You have an elite producer. You don't want to trade them at their peak. But if you're thinking about it, like, oh, I think that this guy could be relatively close in value by next year, the year after, and I'm getting extra ammunition on top of it. That's kind of how I like accumulating dynasty football value. So either way, a lot of mumbo jumbo. Speaking of CMC, we actually do have a trade here, 5-2 contender. Let me know your thoughts on this deal right here.
Yeah, so this one I'm a little more okay stomaching than the Dalvin Cook one mainly because CEH was part of the deal, and CEH probably holds first round value to a lot of people. Me and you are not those people. Like, we're not big fans of CEH long term because he will always have inflated value because he plays for Kansas City. Whereas the talent discrepancy, like when you look at just that draft class alone, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, at the very least, I can say all of those guys are very talented running backs. I can't say that about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? And not only that, I haven't seen him produce at an elite fantasy level, despite having the opportunity to do so these past year and a half or whatever that CEH has been in the NFL. So I'm okay moving a guy like CEH and getting up to a guy like Christian McCaffrey. If this deal was for one first, Tyler Boyd, a second rounder, and CEH, this is a slam dunk. Like, I'm taking CMC every single time. I still think this is a pretty fair deal overall, though, because those firsts are in 2022. If they're late first, again, we expect the 2022 class to not be quite as strong and deep as the 2023 class. So I'm okay with this kind of deal. Plus, those picks are out of the way by a year from now. It's not a 2-year thing.
Yeah, no, I agree to a degree. Again, like it is a lot to stomach, but in this situation, you mentioned 5-2. I do think that
he has like Swift. He has a really good team. Like he's probably going to win the championship now.
And again, although CMC is a depreciating asset at this point because he's an older running back because he's been through injuries, we have seen that even comparatively to like a Dalvin Cook, CMC's ceiling is legitimately something that we have not seen in fantasy football. It's a legitimate 28 to 30 PPR point per game type of ceiling. And no matter what, let's be honest here, the picks that you're getting there or you're giving there, the odds that they become a CMC level asset are just so minimal. And look, like I know I was just shitting on Dalvin Cook like literally a second ago, but Dalvin Cook is, a stud top and RB1 at a ceiling. CMC is a generational asset. That's the difference for me.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Like those 2022 first rounders, your best case scenario, if you pick a running back with those picks, are they turn into Javonte Williams, which is still great, right? But like Isaiah Spiller, Breece Hall, like these guys, their ceilings are like Javonte Williams level prospects. I don't think they're going to be much better than that. They're not Bijan Robinson. They're not Saquon Barkley level prospects. They're not going to be in that CMC territory anytime soon, at least for my money. So let's move on to Stoney's question here. He has a 2-quarterback, 2-tight end league. This is his team, as you guys can see it on the screen. Again, I'm not probably going to read it off, but he does ask current weak spots, couple trade examples, quick roster analysis, and next steps. So basically, this is his team, as you guys can see it on the screen. What do you see as, we're not going to talk about the defensive positions, obviously, because we don't really play an IDP, but what do you see from the offensive players that would be classified as strength, weakness, etc.?
Running backs and tight ends are the weakness for me, and quarterbacks, to be honest, aside from Prescott.
Right.
Like your receivers are the main hold of your team. What I'm doing with this team right now, because he says next steps, I'm honestly selling my older assets here. Like, listen, you got a bunch of young, talented players on your IR right here, obviously with Akers, Dobbins, Jacobs banged up. Jacobs a guy I'd be looking to move if he has a couple bang weeks. Like guys like that, like Jacobs, Sutton, Jasicki, and then either of those quarterbacks I'd be looking to move because this is a team I want to rebuild, retool for 2023 because you got the foundational pieces. It's just a matter of putting the whole roster together, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think when you look at this roster, you see Prescott and Gibson and Dobbins and Akers, I think are still, borderline foundational pieces despite the injury. You have AJ Brown, you have Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. Those are 3 of our top 7 wide receivers in Dynasty right now. Tight end, you're not really working with a whole lot. Quarterback outside of Prescott, you're not really working with a whole lot long term. So yeah, if you can sell any of the guys that you have immediacy assets, like you have the Josh Jacobs, Jared Goff, Jameis Winston, I guess Jameis Winston now that he has an injury. You can even sell some of those injured running backs if you want to, I suppose.
I was about to say, like, at this point, like, as much as I love Dak, like, if you can get, like, I don't know, so somebody's panicking on Justin Fields, you can get Fields in 2 first, or someone's panicking on Zach Wilson, you can probably get Wilson in 2 first. Like, that type of move, I don't mind making in your situation because there's a lot you need to add in terms of your depth to the point where I don't think you can really compete until probably 2023, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, the alternative view of this team is next year when everyone's healthy, Akers, Dobbins, you got Gibson also, like, can you compete with this team next year if, let's say, you have 2 firsts in 2022, you add a quarterback, let's say, in the draft, in your rookie draft, and then maybe you add another wide receiver or tight end or something like that. Can you compete next year with this team? Maybe. But it's also a little bit of a sketchy situation. So if you can shop some of your win now pieces, like Danny mentioned, you don't have to sell everybody. You don't have to sell Goff for nothing. You don't have to sell Jacobs and all these guys for nothing. But if you can turn Josh Jacobs and Jared Goff into a first-round pick just to give you that extra ammunition to be able to retool your quarterback position, retool your running back and tight end positions, then I think you're in a much better situation.
Chase Edmonds into a couple seconds you could probably do. Like something like that as well.
It's a matter of a couple moves for me here. It's not a complete, sell.
No, it's not a complete
Justin Jefferson. Like I probably wouldn't do that with those wide receivers, but if you can sell Sutton, Jacobs, some of the guys that have good value but not great value, that's probably what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, for sure. So we can go on to the next question. It's from SpicyHot. You guys can see the team, but his question is, I have the most points against me in the league and cannot seem to win, even though on paper I should. Do I keep pushing or just keep sinking? And listen, with that roster, like, you say you're 2-6. I have no clue how that happened because you have literally game changers at every position. Obviously, the Ridley news hurts you a lot, but even without Ridley, like your team is absolutely stacked. So there's not much I would really do here. Maybe see if you can get Javonte plus a pick for Chubb because somebody might be willing to give you Javonte and a first for Chubb. And at that point, because you're probably going to be more of a 2022 guy because you're in such a hole. That's probably the only real move I'd make because let's be honest, by next year, Javonte and Chubb should probably have similar value anyways, and you're getting a first-round pick. Aside from that type of move, there's not much I'm looking to do with this roster.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you punt this to 2022, Calvin Ridley, let's say, is back by then, hopefully, and you still have some of these win now running backs that are still going to be in their primes. I have no doubt in my mind Kamara and Eckler are still going to be top end running backs this time next year. I think you're in pretty safe position by that point. Maybe use your first round pick in 2022, get yourself a Treylon Burks or something like a difference making young wide receiver to add to your core, and some of your young guys, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, Jalen Waddle. Hopefully they develop and continually get to that point. But overall, your roster's in a good spot. Maybe you have Darren Waller and Noah Fant. Maybe you want to shop one of those guys, maybe Darren Waller, just because you're rebuilding for 2020 or retooling for 2022. If Darren Waller has a couple big weeks, maybe you could sell him off for a first rounder and a young wide receiver or something like that. But overall, I kind of agree with Danny. I think you kind of just got screwed however your schedule lined up, and you probably just need to make 1 or 2 moves just to retool this for next year.
Yep, fully agree. We can go on to the next team. That's going to be from Metzgerchef. You guys can see the team on the screen. And he basically asked for Dynasty Decisions video. Team at the moment is looking rough. Don't know how I talked myself into the 2 trades. But he's wondering what to do at the moment, where to go. 5-3 going into a couple of rough weeks. Any suggestions? So looking at the trades, you guys can kind of see some of those deals there. Don't want to explain it, but he mentions the Michael Thomas and the Calvin Ridley moves. Michael Thomas one, I don't mind at all. Like, he gave up Michael Thomas. Yeah. I don't like that Michael Thomas move or the Ridley move, to be honest. So we can move past that. Aside from that, I mean, looking at the roster right now, like, this is clearly to me more of a win now roster. I would be looking to see what you can get for Jalen Hurts if you can put him into, another quarterback, maybe Stafford in a first, somebody who's willing to do at this point. Like, I genuinely think given, he's young, he's a rushing quarterback, somebody might be able to fall into that Fugazi and give you too much value for Jalen Hurts, which I would do. Again, you have Stafford, you have Brady at that point, and obviously with all of those win now pieces. At 5-3, I mean, I would just kind of hold all of your win now pieces and see if you can make a push for the championship otherwise.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. I don't know if I'm going to be doing too much to try and either
just the Stafford thing
increase my longevity going forward or to rebuild mid-season, because you are 5-3. You have a chance at winning. You have, some elite difference makers at each position, including 2 quarterbacks that are going to help you at least this year make a championship push. Both of those guys are top 8 quarterbacks for this season. You have 2 great running backs. You have a couple good wide receivers, even without Ridley, and you have a tight end that's pretty solid as well. So overall, like Danny said, it sucks that you don't really have any draft picks to help yourself retool and reload some of your positions, particularly quarterback, with having Hurts and Brady, who I view both as win now type of guys. So that's the unfortunate part of your situation. But overall, I think your best bet is just to stay put, try and win this year. And if you have to reevaluate in the offseason, you have to reevaluate in the offseason, or, try and make a move like Danny said. Maybe you don't go for Stafford. Maybe you go for Zach Wilson in a first for Jalen Hurts. Maybe somebody's completely fed up with a guy like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields or even Mac Jones or someone like that. I would probably rather have than Jalen Hurts if you can get pieces on top of it.
Yep, no, for sure. So we can move on to the next team. That's going to be from Strendds, aka Jer. He basically says this is his team he sent. He messaged it in the super chat, so appreciate that as well. If you start 2 running backs, must start tight end. He's just looking for advice for a stretch run. He's team 4 and he has no picks in 2022, but all of his picks in 2023. Basically, he outlines his division. Division winner gets a playoff spot and a chance for a bye, 3 wild card, 3 divisions. Thanks so much. So you guys can kind of see the teams on the screen. Anything that jumps out to you right away?
Right. So he is the 7-1 team, correct?
Yeah, he's team 4, he said.
Yeah. Okay. So he's 7-1. Obviously, he's got a very good team. He's ready to make a championship push. Overall, looking at the teams in his division, it looks like team 3 doesn't really have a shot in hell based on the running backs that they have. Also, not the strongest team with team 1 as well. So like depth wise, and like he has some elite players like Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but just not enough true difference makers at every position. Your biggest competition clearly is team 2 with Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. They got a pretty stable set of quarterbacks. It's a 1 quarterback league, so it doesn't really matter as much. But overall, looking at this division, it looks like you have the best team, and that's indicated by your record. I think that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. Looking for advice. There's nothing that really stands out to me. Obviously, your running backs are pretty volatile right now, but with CH coming back, you should be more fine there. It's just, Alex Collins filling in for now.
Some of the injuries you've sustained have definitely hurt you. Logan Thomas will be back soon, too. That helps your tight end core a little bit as well. But yeah, the Dobbins and Edwards being out definitely probably hurt you before the season, but I think you're in, pretty good shape regardless. The only issue that I have right now is that at quarterback, you don't have like the greatest upside until Trey Lance takes over the starting job, or maybe when Zach Wilson comes back.
Yep. No, I fully agree there. But I do think there's not really much to do. Maybe if you want to add, another running back for security, you want to trade for like a Leonard Fournette. I don't mind making that type of move. But aside from that, there's not really much I would do here. Go win your championship.
Yep.
But we can move on to the next question/team. That's gonna be from Connor Dickey. After lots of trades, ended up with this team. Just wondering what are my next steps besides flipping Aguilar and Taylor. Love the content and seeing the growth of the channel. Appreciate that again from Connor Dickey. So you guys can kind of see the team. 12 team, 1 quarterback, super flex, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, or 2 flexes and a tight end. But nothing that like really sticks out to me from the like initial standpoint. Anything that you see here that you notice?
No, I would say looking at your team, it's clearly like, you see what happens this year, but you're not in like a huge push to
2022
compete.
Team.
Because like, again, the quickest way to tell if you're competing or not is look at your running backs and quarterbacks, right? You have quarterbacks, 1, Deshaun Watson, right? That's a clear indication to me that you probably can't compete this year because you have an elite quarterback who's not playing. And you also have 2 injured running backs in Travis Etienne, in J.K. Dobbins. And then you also have a rookie running back with Javonte Williams. So to me, come 2022, this could be the best team in your league, right? If Watson's, let's say he's Carolina Panther, Denver Bronco, whatever, he's going to be a stud quarterback along with Justin Herbert. You're going to have 2 of the best quarterbacks in Dynasty. You're going to have, 2 really good running backs with Gibson and Javonte Williams. Hopefully Dobbins and Etienne also kind of get to that level as well. At wide receiver, you do have some young guys like Godwin, like Bateman, like Claypool, like Devontae Smith, that should be able to form yourself a really good wide receiver core. Although that is probably your weakest position right now is wide receiver, I would say, just in terms of top end talent. But your picks are probably where I'm targeting to add to my team is at wide receiver is what I'm probably looking at.
For sure. And the other thing that really only sticks out to me is maybe trying to see if you can sell high on Gesicki or Knox. Obviously, both are performing extremely well from a fantasy football standpoint. Both have kind of question marks in terms of their long-term value. If you can shift Gesicki or Knox maybe into a late first or 2 seconds or something like that, somebody might be willing to do that, especially if they're more of a contender. They have a couple picks lying around, or maybe, heck, you can shift Knox and that second into a Noah Fant, something like that.
Yeah, or a Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But aside from that, I mean, that's obviously a move. Obviously, aside from
I don't hate adding like going to try and trade for Pat Freiermuth right now using that early second that you have potentially too. I don't mind making a move like that. Or like you said, take Dawson Knox and try and see if you can flip him straight up for Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, heck, or maybe you want to say Knox for Freiermuth in 2 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, and that's nothing against Gesicki and Knox. It looks like they're pretty solid players and they're going to have some value going forward. But this is just to try and get yourself some upgrades at positions. But yeah, like I said, you're expecting that you have 2 early firsts in 2022. Doesn't look like you really need running backs at this point in your team. Doesn't look like you really need a quarterback either, and it's probably not the class to be taking a quarterback. So if you can sell those picks on the clock or close to the draft, then that's also a move that you could probably make. If somebody's willing to give up like DK Metcalf with like a Russell Wilson ambiguous situation in Seattle for that early first so that they can draft a Breece Hall or something like that, then I think that's a move that you could make closer to your rookie draft.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree here. So we can move on to the next team/questions. This can be from AJ. AJ from YouTube for Dynasty Decisions. And he basically says that the 2021 first he has is top 2 guaranteed. The guy that doesn't have a win. He kind of gives some context here. He's contending every league every week you play the person that you're playing as well as a league median. So theoretically here, he's 10-6 by that regard. If you guys have any moves, blah, blah, blah. I have a current offer for Stafford for Baker and a first. So in terms of that offer right away, which side would you rather have, Matthew Stafford or Baker in the 2024 first?
Yeah, so the first is in 2024, so it's not for 3 years. I would take Matthew Stafford personally. Baker Mayfield, yes, he's a young quarterback. Yes, he's 7-8 years younger than Matthew Stafford right now. Baker Mayfield ain't reaching Matthew Stafford levels anytime soon based on the offense that he's in. He's clearly in a run funnel offense. He's clearly a quarterback option too that doesn't really inspire a whole lot of fantasy confidence in me because he doesn't run. He's not in an offense that throws a lot, doesn't have the greatest weapons in the world. And I'm sure that the weapons part of it could change, but what's Baker's ceiling on a season, right? Like a top 12, top 15 quarterback in the coming years. Matthew Stafford might be a top 5 quarterback the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, we've seen it this year that Matthew Stafford, what he's been doing with the LA Rams, has really unlocked what we really knew about Matthew Stafford before this year, but we haven't really been able to see on display. So from a contending position, maybe you're giving up a tiny bit more value than maybe you'd like. But I mean, at the end of the day here, if Stafford can win you a championship and Stafford could be a Tom Brady, Dak Prescott level of efficient passing type of fantasy quarterback, you're not going to be regretting that type of move. So
I also think there's more long-term security with Matthew Stafford than there is with Baker Mayfield. We don't know what his contract situation is going to work out to be. They might franchise tag Baker Mayfield after this year, or I can't remember if he's on his 5th-year option right now or not. But either way, I have less concerns long-term from a contract standpoint with Matthew Stafford than I do for the 25-year-old Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, no, I fully agree there. So we can move on to his next kind of deal he made. He sent a couple that he made. The first one being he sent away Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and Noah Fant, and received George Kittle, Chris Carson, and Marquise Brown. So looking at this right away, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the one part of this deal that I don't like is trading for Chris Carson.
Agreed.
It's a little sketchy right now just because of his neck injury. We don't know what the medical implications are. To me, looking at this trade overall, best asset in this deal is DeAndre Hopkins to me, still, even over George Kittle. And second best is George Kittle. So I personally probably lean the Hopkins side just because I think the difference between Fant and Kittle is smaller than the difference between, Hopkins and Marquise Brown and then AJ Brown to Chris Carson or Antonio Brown, to Chris Carson. So I personally would take the Antonio Brown side of this deal personally.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, I understand the rationale. Again, if you have more higher hopes on Chris Carson, I guess. But
Need an
the
upgrade at tight end to make a championship
yeah.
push, I guess, too. Definitely makes sense as well.
Neck injury just personally concerns me a little too much, but he does send another offer here. A boatload of players getting swapped here. He basically gave up Matthew Stafford, Cam Akers, the little Rams duo there, James Robinson, Chuba Hubbard in 2/3, and he received Julio Jones, Saquon Barkley, Tua Tagovailoa, and a 2022 fourth. So looking at this deal right here,
do we cancel the quarterbacks out? Are they even in value, or do we still?
I'd
think
rather Stafford.
You'd rather have Stafford? Okay.
Well, honestly, like I would say Tua and Julio is
Julio.
probably fair value
Yeah,
for
Tua and
Stafford.
Julio is probably fair value for Stafford. And again, it's all going to really depend how high you are on Tua, because I'm sure some people would rather have Tua than Stafford, and some people don't even think that's a close discussion. Stafford over Tua. I personally would rather have Stafford than Tua. You give him Julio involved in that deal as well. I think that's probably fair. So it's basically Saquon Barkley for for Akers, Robinson, Hubbard, and 2/3. I might take the package in this one. It's like, as much as I love Saquon Barkley is like a borderline top 3, top 5 pick for me overall in Superflex startups. This is a lot to give up for Saquon Barkley, essentially, because Tua is the only one else that has some long-term appeal in this one. And we basically at every turn, the Dolphins seem to want to shit on Tua.
Yeah, like this is probably pretty fair value. Again, if you're a contender, Julio Jones is going to have more value to you than just like decently proportional value like otherwise. So I understand the move, probably a little bit much for my personal taste, but I understand the rationale here.
If you take Akers out of that deal, I think that's a great move. But the unknown factor of Cam Akers makes me a little nervous in this one. And J-Rob's also a young running back that has some value going forward.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. So it's probably a little much for our personal taste, but
I don't hate the deal though. There is a world where Cam Akers never gets back to Cam Akers that we thought because of the Achilles injury. There's a world where James Robinson is, never a workhorse back again after this year because ETN's involved or whatever, and they just kind of have a split backfield. But I think Barkley's probably
there's actually
not worth that whole package. What's up?
This is actually context that we forgot. I remember he mentioned this another time. It's a 1 quarterback league. So in a 1 quarterback league, I don't mind making that move personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's a little bit closer in a 1 quarterback.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I just took that in because he was asking earlier this week about the J-Rob Akers Stafford for Dalvin Madison. And I remember him saying 1 quarterback dynasty. So I'm assuming it's the same league if he sent away Stafford, J-Rob, and
right.
Yeah, so either way, again, it's pretty fair value. But with the 1 quarterback side, I don't mind getting that elite asset. I mean, Saquon Barkley is probably a top 5 overall pick, especially in 1 quarterback leagues.
Yep.
So anyways, the final discussion here / question that Wyatt has here. What are your and Bush's early top 5 Superflex picks right now? Dynasty decisions. So this is a good question. Again, I'll probably just outline a little bit more of my first round because let's be honest, for me personally right now, if you're talking about top 5 Superflex picks, I don't think I can take any other position over my top 5 quarterbacks. Honestly, at this point, there's just so much risk. As much as I love Christian McCaffrey, like I would take a Lamar Jackson over him, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, someone like that, because there's so much less risk involved there. I know you're more of a proponent of the running back position. How would you kind of analyze that?
So I would say for sure in my top 5, and we'll kind of do this from both, because he didn't specify whether he meant rookies, like 2022 rookies, or if he meant just startup players. So we'll talk about the startup first, and then we'll quickly talk about potentially the top 5 rookie startup pick or rookie picks in 2022. So for me, it's clearly Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, whatever order that you have those guys in. They're clearly in the top 5 for me. Those are my top 3 quarterbacks, and I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. And then 4 and 5 would be kind of a mix of whatever your flavor is, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, who are my top 2 dynasty wide receivers, or if you want to continue going with quarterbacks with Kyler Murray, who's my QB4, Justin Herbert, who's my QB5, Dak Prescott, who's my QB6. You could definitely mix any of those guys kind of into that top 5 range. Right now, I would say Christian McCaffrey would be in my top 5 for sure. And then probably right after him would be Kyler Murray at 5.
McCaffrey's probably the only non-quarterback that works his way into my top 7. If I'm looking at it right now, like even like if I'm looking at it, McCaffrey versus Burrow is probably close. I would probably still take McCaffrey there. My cutoff is probably after the top 6. So personally for me, any order you decide, Mahomes, Murray, Allen, Lamar, Dak, Herbert. Let's just say those are the top 6 for me. And then you go into the next player. I'd probably take Christian McCaffrey there. Then I would flip back to Joe Burrow. And then you get into the DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Kyle Pitts type of area. So at that point, I know for sure seven quarterbacks are definitely going to be in my first round. And then pick your flavor, like the top 5 skill positions, tight ends, running backs, receivers, however you like it. Typically for me, again, though, it's going to be a McCaffrey, Swift, Chase, AJ Brown, Lamb, Jefferson, Pitts type of mixture, if you will.
Right. And then on the rookies, basically, just quickly, again, we haven't done a whole lot of research on the rookies yet. We'll do a lot more in the offseason. For me, it's clearly Isaiah Spiller right now, from what I've seen, is my RB1. Again, I haven't, dug into these guys 100%, but Isaiah Spiller would for sure make his way into the top 5 for me. Then, again, we don't really know how the quarterback class is going to shake out. But again, we are talking about Superflex. So Matt Corral and
Malik
the Liberty
Willis.
kid, Malik Willis, they're probably like in that top 5 range just because of what Willis can present
Draft
with his
capital.
legs, and Matt Corral probably with his arm as well. So it's really all up in the air. But I would say Spiller and those 2 quarterbacks for sure would be in there, and then it's kind of a mix of the other running backs, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, as well as the top receivers, Burks, Garrett Wilson, David Bell, Drake London, whoever you want to put up into that conversation.
Yeah, no, I fully agree there. Again, it's so early, but by probably February, by the Super Bowl time, we'll kind of have more of an idea of who performed throughout the season, who's getting the most hype from NFL draft circles, and then we can do our own personal research on that. But right off the bat, yeah, top 5. Honestly, this year, there's not really like a quote unquote standout top 3 overall level prospect.
I wouldn't even say there's a standout 101 even now.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree there.
Yep.
But either way, if you guys have made it this far in the video and you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like down below and help us in the YouTube algorithm. But anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
No, like I said, if you guys do want first access to Dynasty Decisions, if you want to be in future videos, you can message us on Twitter. But like I said, the best way to get first access is to become a Patreon, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. We will be, covering all the prospect stuff and more Dynasty related content into the off season once we get more invested into Patreon, the platform, because we both have to kind of like learn how to use it correctly. So, but for the time being, we're offering as much content as we possibly can on there. So make sure you go sign up over there if you want to support us in any way. But like Danny said, like, comment, subscribe. Peace out.